Hi and welcome to IndigoStarfire. My name is Bevin, and in this video I'm going to be looking into your no contact love situation. Is reconciliation possible and or on the horizon? So there are 4 groups to choose from. Group 1 is the Tibetan Quartz point. Group 2 is the Agate palm stone. Group 3 is the Lapis Lazuli palm stone. And group 4 is the pink Tourmaline point. So if you want to take a moment to center, focus on your breathing, and feel whichever group, maybe multiple groups or perhaps all of the groups that you're most drawn to. I'll give you a minute to make your selection and then we'll get right into it. And there are timestamps in the description box of the video for each group if you would like to jump ahead. Hi, Group 1. You chose the Tibetan Quartz point. So I'm going to start by looking into the energies of your person right now, the one you are in a no contact circumstance with. What's going on with them in this moment? Okay, so we have the 7 of Swords, which is air energy, Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. 10 of Pentacles, which is earth energy, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. 6 of Wands, which is fire energy, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Man holding a heart. Patience. And second chakra, Archangel Ariel. So this person still has a lot of love for you with man holding a heart. It's tying in for me with this energy here with the 10 of Pentacles and this little jar of coins. This ties into memories that they are looking back over very actively, very consciously at this point in time. This isn't just fleeting thoughts and reminders. If they're getting those kind of fleeting thoughts and reminders, they're following that through with very deliberately, maybe looking back over old photos. For some of you with this 7 of Swords, this person is like sneaking around online, looking you up, Googling you, watching you on social media, looking back over those old photos, emails, text messages, direct messages. For some, it could even just be memories in the mind if there are not sort of those concrete tokens that they kept with them. But it feels like for a lot, there are tokens of this connection that you may have thought, oh, they threw that away. It may be something that you gifted them at some point in time. Maybe even for some, like a playlist of songs is coming through that you would have just assumed by now, surely, or based on the circumstances, they would have discarded that. Maybe they acted like they didn't care. They were kind of unaffected, were very just nonchalant at the time that you had sent them these songs, or maybe even like songs that you had mentioned. But it feels like behind the scenes, they had created a playlist of these things that remind them of you. If you'd sent them songs, they didn't just listen to it once and let it sort of slide by them. They took note of that. They have it all sort of saved in a file somewhere, something that at various points in time, depending on how long you've been in no contact, for some of you, this may be a substantial no contact situation, like a long time has passed with this patience energy, kind of the temperance card here. There may have been times where they've gone for extensive stretches. not deliberately listening to songs that remind them of you, not looking over these kind of mementos or tokens of affection, things that remind them of experiences that you have, little souvenirs even, it feels like, that they may have kept that you didn't know about. This could be movie ticket stubs. It could be, something like the stick of a lollipop from a festival or fair that you went to, just odd little things, gum wrappers, flyers, napkins with specific like dates or just little notes written on them, just these odd little trinkets and tokens, things that remind them of time spent together. If you were out in nature somewhere, this could be rocks or seashells that they had collected, things that are very sentimental, that it almost feels like with the Seven of Swords energy, they're kind of guilty about the fact that they have these things. They feel very guilty. It's like a sentimental side of themselves that they don't often show to people. You may not have even known that they had these things, that they ordinarily might not even be a collector type of a person. This could be a really minimalist individual. They value experiences more than possessions and things. However, in the context of this situation, and this could actually, again, be very telling for you in the context of this reading, that they have this whole other side to them that they view as kind of like shadowy. They're kind of just very quietly sort of looking back over these things, maybe even things that they've kind of accumulated or amassed in the time since you had parted ways with one another, that just bring them back to the better times that you shared in the connection. So at this point, although, it's radio silence, no contact situation, they are deliberately tapping into kind of these better memories, these warm feelings. And this isn't, the idea of like little mementos and souvenirs isn't going to apply to everyone. So for those of you where this is not the case, maybe this was strictly an online connection, so just such things wouldn't exist. That would then sort of apply to the idea of, the souvenir in the form of conversations, or again, like playlists and songs, things of that nature, things that they are kind of even just going back over their mind about, taking note of, that you had mentioned, things that you like, things that you're interested in, your opinions about things, better times that you shared, the good conversations, the very sort of like stimulating ideas that were exchanged with one another, inside jokes, kind of times where things were a lot brighter before the no contact circumstance happened. At this point in time, very secretly and behind closed doors, giving no indications of this. This feels something like in the dead of night they're doing these things, they're looking over these things, or just very like internally and behind this mask of stoicism, going back in their mind over times that you have shared with one another. And it's helping to sustain them in what feels to be kind of a lonely or quiet period in this situation. Even if this is a no contact situation, they initiated themselves. They're feeling very much this yearning to kind of get closer to your energy or the memory of you in some way, that it brings forth warmth and hope to them in a way that may be lacking in other areas of their life, even if they're in another connection. They have a very busy life, a very full life. There's an energy of loneliness here. And that this is kind of like a secret passion of theirs to sort of look back and not even just so much wonder what if, but kind of saturate themselves in the energy of good times when they were, really on top of the world in this situation, when the chemistry was flowing between the two of you and there was this deep compatibility and things were really going according to plan before everything sort of spiraled out of control. So a lot of nostalgia in this energy, and, just again, kind of like deliberately tapping into these memories, things that they have held on to, physical things, or just even kind of like emotions, again, songs coming through very strongly here, that they have held on to this information, or these kind of like a roadmap of nostalgia. It's like these rest stops where they know that they can wander to, they can venture to, and it's guaranteed to kind of provide them a feeling of closeness with you despite the distance that has been created in this situation, that those memories are very much alive for them and continue to kind of sustain them and provide them warmth through what may have been a long duration no contact situation, or something where they're feeling very lonely and very, very much wanting to like get in closer proximity to you energetically at this point in time. So I'm going to take a look at some of the blocks that they might be dealing with in this situation, and then we'll get into kind of the juicy part. The main course of this reading, is reconciliation possible? Is that on the horizon? So first of all, what blocks are they dealing with at this point in time? Okay, so we have caching, abundance, and commitment. So I love that this caching card came out. This is definitely a confirmation of like these little trinkets, these little mementos, even if it's just memories that they have stored away for a rainy day to revisit. They have not discarded these things. They have not forgotten about certain things that you said, certain like little keywords, places that they can venture to, or things that they can just sort of pick up, and they are instantly transported back to the better times that the two of you shared. That this is something that they are heavily leaning into at this point in time, but it's tying in for me with that idea of like sneakiness with the Seven of Swords. In some way, there's like you represent a forbidden fruit at this point in time, or the idea, almost it feels like pride and ego may be an obstacle at this point in time. This sentimental part of themselves that they are frightened to open up about. And that may have definitely been a wedge or a block in this situation in the past, was kind of the wall that you hit with this person, emotionally speaking. They may have accused you of being too needy, demanding too much, expecting too much out of them, kind of somebody with a walled off heart. And that still seems to be kind of an issue where the idea of deep emotions, deep passion, deep romance, in some way they're thinking that this is not a sign of strength, but more of a sign of weakness for themselves, to where there's a need to kind of like hide away this tender part of themselves, hide away this truly romantic part of themselves. They're dismissing it as like a shadow at this point in time. They're misconstruing this element about themselves, or this aspect about themselves, and it's tying into the idea of sort of blocks that are maybe standing in the way of moving closer toward reconciliation, is parts of themselves that they have really segmented and compartmentalized. It's like denying the authenticity of who they are. So that would be like more of an internal block. It's tying in for me with this idea of abundance. It's kind of like a lack mentality right here. Like some aspect of them, the deeply feeling, the deeply emotional part of themselves, there's a tendency to kind of just like stuff that down and hide that away. It feels like due to a fear of being kind of like their kindness being taken for weakness, or to open up or let people in to kind of that soft center within themselves. It exposes their kind of like underbelly to wounding in some manner. This may have been something that people that they let in, or they let sort of see or peek behind the curtain of this energy in the past, that could have been used against them in some manner. They could have dealt with very manipulative partners in the past, or just some kind of like a heartbreak. This may be somebody with it's bringing to mind almost somebody with maybe like a Pisces moon, somebody who's just like deeply emotional inside, and like easily wounded, easily hurt, feels things on a very kind of like visceral and subconscious level. But it's something where, even that kind of reference to moon energy, where it's like a shaming almost of themselves, that they're not seeing this aspect of emotionality or sentimentality as a sign of strength, but rather they have kind of defined it, or have been made to believe that it is in fact a hallmark of weakness. And so again, more of this kind of like internal block at this point in time that is standing in the way of them, just really kind of being very forthright about the depth and nature of what they felt for you back then and what they still feel for you now. This idea here of commitment can be, kind of this vow, it feels like, that, to never let anyone that deeply again into their life. That may have been sort of the problem in this situation, something where the nature of their feelings, what was being stirred up and churned up from the depths, it set off, it feels like, almost red flags for this person of like other times in their past when they had felt so deeply, had let people in so intimately, and trust was broken, or there was heartbreak, or there was some kind of wounding, something that it took a long time to kind of like pick the pieces back up from. And so, kind of this vow of like, I'll never let anyone back in, I'll never love that deeply again, I'll never expose myself to that same kind of like heartbreak and hurt, as much as they are like yearning for you, as much as they've got all these little trinkets and souvenirs, literally or figuratively, where they go into that space very consciously, very deliberately, to kind of like warm themselves by the fire of these memories and these experiences. They are standing in their own way at this point in time. They are the blockade to opening up and almost like showing you this hearth fire that they have within and saying, please come inside and sit with me here. Come and know me in this way. See me in this light. A lot of fear-based energy and almost a sense of kind of a lack mentality of like, would you still find them as appealing, or would you still be drawn to them? Would you still view them as sort of like as desirable and as put together as maybe the image that they've been presenting as kind of like stoicism, very strong, very unbothered, very resilient, and yet there's this other element of them that is very vulnerable within, that they've been taught or have been made to believe, or have just convinced themselves is somehow, it's a shadow, it's an undesirable quality, it needs to be stuffed down, it can't be shown to other people, because to show that would almost then, it's a feeling of like, would you ridicule them? Would you reject them? Would you still love them in the same way? So they're kind of standing in their own way at this point in time, feels to be the biggest issue sort of in this situation, or like the major block that is wanting to be highlighted as kind of number one on that list of sort of things that they are needing to work through in order to be able to kind of bring forth the energies of reconciliation. A lot of this is just kind of like getting out of their own way, breaking that vow that they made to themselves at once upon a time, to just kind of like not let anyone into that inner sanctuary, rather than feeling very kind of like guilty or shameful about this sentimentality, this very deep and emotional and sensitive part of themselves. The task at this point is kind of, unearthing that with that idea of like caching, like geocaching, digging in to that space, finding the treasure and bringing that out into the light of day and into the light of what they're able to present you with in this connection. So I'm going to get into the main event here, and let's see, is reconciliation on the horizon? Is it possible in this circumstance? What does that look like? Okay, so we have community, co-create, tree, grounding, full moon, completion. So I love that we have this moon card here, most specifically full moon and completion energy. This is really tying into kind of these aspects and areas of themselves, this deeply emotional and feeling part, or even feelings they are still harboring for you, deep emotions that have not been expressed, are needing to be expressed, are still there waiting to be expressed. That this is kind of this is the energy of sort of coming full circle with that tendency to stuff and suppress and deny. This is, the full moon energy, that bright moon, bringing that forth into, illumination in some manner. However, with this idea though of moon energy, it's still something is obscured. So it feels like in terms of the nature of reconciliation, that there will still be a lot that they will hold back, some element of mystery. This isn't divulging everything. This isn't like completely standing in the sun in the light of day, but it is dipping a toe in the water. It is moving beyond just kind of like total radio silence, the full curtain that has dropped in this situation. It's shedding light a little bit on kind of what dwells within them in terms of these thoughts and feelings towards you. On this card here with co-create, it's this little owl on kind of this tightrope. So this is really indicating, kind of this timid approach, some kind of signal that's given, some kind of message, some kind of an indication. It may be something that at first glance is kind of like lacking in depth and substance. It may be something that makes you a little bit uneasy, or there are even these energetic cues and clues that at any moment this person could take flight back into that energy of silence. It's something where they're not, leaping forth like with this cheetah here. They're not at a full run in your direction. It's almost like they're leaving themselves an escape plan in some manner. And this feels to tie into not anything to do even necessarily with you and the nature of the connection. This is due to kind of, it's tying back to that idea of like the major block that's holding them back at this point in time is a level of discomfort with their own kind of emotional body. We've also got this idea of tree grounding. So this is an indicator of somebody who will not be content in the long term to just sit and play with their box of mementos. They're not just going to want to sit there and, keep rehearsing, keep rehashing, keep revisiting those same sort of memories. That it's kind of like the more they do this, the more time that goes by. Maybe it's been a long time, but so, this can be kind of a process that's almost like molasses, but ever so gradually. And for some of you, quicker than others, it's almost like each time they sort of dip back into that area, they get closer and closer to the brink of reaching out, going out on a limb in this situation to shoot their shot, to give it a chance, to reach forth, to see if the seeds of potential between the two of you are still viable after all this time, after everything that's happened, despite these kind of like fears and hesitations within themselves. But it's something that again is like tenuous. Is this something where, it feels like they'll inch beyond their comfort zone, but there is this energy of like at any minute they could take flight, at any minute they could get spooked and sort of retreat or run again. So it's unknown kind of the long-term potential of how viable is this energy of reconciliation. If they reach out, is this something that is going to be able to endure through all the seasons? Or is this going to be something which, kind of at the first sign of turmoil or sort of that internal fright within themselves is just going to blow over, is going to go back to square one where you find yourselves at this point in time? The idea of community and these two giraffes here, again, kind of like that reaching out with the long neck. It's stretching forward. It's like peeking out from behind the curtain. But with most of this giraffe's body still in the hut, it's again this indication here of, just giving a little, putting a feeler out in some manner, needing to sort of tiptoe. This little baby giraffe is like baby steps in your direction. So they may come forth in a very sort of like surface level energy, very mundane, not wanting to kind of like touch on these deep emotional issues. There may be things that are kind of like left to the imagination in some way. They leave an element of secrecy. They're not going to fully divulge, hey, I've been thinking about you, constantly. I review these old memories. It feels like most definitely they're going to continue to obscure if they have their little box of mementos, or like a file on their computer saved about you, or a playlist, things of that nature. They're not going to divulge that. At least not right away. For some, maybe not ever. It's going to be part of the element of mystery, just something about who they are. But this is an indicator of like going out on a limb, changing pace from what the status quo has been in this situation up to this point in time. That in the long term, this energy of just kind of like nearing the warmth of the memories that the two of you have shared and kind of like basking in that, the more they do that, the more that they revisit that place, it feels like almost very unconscious to themselves at this point in time. Although that's very deliberate, they're almost nearing this proximity of just saying something out loud, that it's no longer the fix or the adrenaline rush or the dopamine hit that they get from this experience. It's taking like more and more of it to sort of sustain and to create justification and reasons to not put those feelers out and kind of like extend that inquiry, extend those points of contact to something more in the material world. So for a lot of you, yes, there'll be some kind of like contact, some energy of reconciliation that's possible, but this may be something, again, with that kind of like the baby giraffe and the baby steps and this little egg right here, this raw potential, this untapped potential, all of this kind of like mystery that it will still be somebody who's operating in a lot of like shadow, a lot that they're kind of keeping to themselves. So it may be something that only time will tell how sustainable this is. It may be something to tie back in with that energy of patience. Patience will be required of you to understand that it's more than just apologizing. It's more than just saying, I was wrong. I made the wrong decision. I changed my mind. I see now grass wasn't greener on the other side, whatever that looks like. On some level, this is almost like a 180-degree turn from how this individual has been moving through life, maybe for most of their life, for a very long period of time, perhaps for their whole life, where they feel a lot of guilt and shame about the depth and nature of their own emotional body. So it's more than just about reconciling with you. This is like stepping beyond a comfort zone, unlearning the status quo of how they've been moving in relation to their own relationship with their emotional body. So keeping that in mind, in context, in terms of what they're able to provide, kind of the energy of sort of like skirting around this deep truth, and understanding that it may take time, with this baby giraffe, this egg right here. This isn't like it's going to stay immature forever, but it needs time to gestate and mature. This individual needs, it feels like, time to sort of acclimate to letting you in. It's, opening up. It's going to be a gradual process. There may be sort of some growing pains alongside that. So it may not be, they've returned happily ever after. It's all fine and done. This could be something where, there's kind of some ups and downs with that. That's, they're kind of like leaning back in, stumbling, still combating that lack within. It's both sort of opening up to the connection and sort of moving beyond an element like a coping mechanism or a tendency or a learned behavior within themselves. So it's kind of like a double aspect, a double story that is happening that's involved with kind of this notion or this energy of reconciliation and potential. So I'm going to get some guidance for you from Spirit, and then I'll close it out with some initials. Okay, so we have purity. So this is really speaking about like the beginner's mind, and what has happened in the past, the way that this individual has been showing up previously, being willing to kind of like see and look beyond the efforts that they're making. If you're hoping for that full confession, you're hoping that right away they're going to dive into these deep emotional waters. You're best suited in this situation to enter into this with kind of a hopefulness in a way, being very open to the organic manner in which this can unfold, not coming forth with any kind of agenda, any kind of pressure, just allowing things to develop naturally, understanding that they are, again, not just sort of making amends or reaching out in some manner, but it's going to require them sort of rebirthing a different aspect of themselves, stepping beyond a comfort zone, unlearning behaviors. It's a multi-pronged process or mechanism that is unfolding in this situation of reconciliation. So keeping the wisdom of the past and what you've experienced with this person, that's part of discernment, keeping those boundaries high, not kind of like second guessing or putting on the back burner your own emotional needs, but also really trying to take a very open approach and understanding the deeper layers of kind of what they're struggling with, what they're needing to sort of transcend and move beyond in order to give you kind of what you're seeking and what you're hoping for in this connection is the best recipe for, allowing the slate to be cleaned in this situation so that the two of you can move and grow and develop in a new direction. You know, this idea here though, with this kind of wintry scene right here, this can also be, you know, this sort of double kind of confirmation here of, you know, if they're coming forth with something and they're stepping far beyond their comfort zone, far beyond their limits in a way, even if it doesn't seem, you know, that significant to you, to them it's almost, you know, going out on a ledge in some way, unlearning a lot of things, that there may be these periods of time, these bumps in the road where they're going back into that wintry energy. They're shutting down again. You know, they reach forward only to kind of retreat back into those walls. But again, as they are doing at this point with kind of these mementos and these memories, each time they sort of get closer to that edge, and then they're retreating back into themselves, retreating back into guilt and shame and fear and whatever that looks like. Each time they come forth, they're nearing, you know, the precipice of profound change and growth. So it may be something that, you know, not expecting overnight change, sort of keeping the notion or the, you know, the possibility in your mind that if they come forward, there may be some stumbling blocks. They may be sort of leaning into this energy of running from you again, trying not to take that very personally, but just kind of understanding what it is that they're working with. It feels like this person has a lot of love for you. There is a lot of depth of emotions, and that may be something just in general very triggering for them. And it feels like even the notion of reconciliation, what that entails in this situation, it's an unlearning of their patterns and tendencies as far as dealing with their own emotions, letting people into that sacred space, that very vulnerable space, and showing perhaps for the first time or the first time in a while a face of themselves that they feel at this point. It's almost, it's been frozen in time. It's something that hasn't seen the light of day. They haven't infused this part of themselves with love. So again, this kind of like double mission that they are on here, loving themselves by honoring, you know, that deep emotional part of themselves and what lives there, these feelings for you, this desire for closeness and renewal, you know, honoring that part as far as also what they are able to then provide to you can kind of create with this, even this wolf with the two different color eyes, it's this balance between this and that, understanding that it's more than just about saying I'm sorry. This is almost this person engaging in like a whole paradigm shift for themselves. So looking at it from a long-term situation, if you've been in a long-term no contact, it may not even be surprising that, you know, based on the nature of the connection in general, that reconciliation would fit into that same category of like a long haul process. But it's something where, you know, maybe patience is your lesson here, and the courage to love themselves utterly and truly could be this person's lesson. So you're really just meeting in the middle somewhere, you know, taking your time, taking baby steps, and, you know, just really kind of trusting in the process is the best way to receive what this person is like wanting to bring forth and to give. So I'm going to get some initials, and this can be a first, middle, or last name of you or this person, or it could spell something out, just whatever resonates for you. Okay, we've got Q, L, R, O, F, D, M, E, Y, W, and I. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, or share. If you'd like a personal reading, I offer them through my Etsy shop, and there's a link in the description box of the video for that. I offer a variety of pre-recorded video readings, written readings, and channeled letters. Turnaround time on everything is 5 to 7 days from the time of purchase. I also sell handmade jewelry, dream catchers, and sun catchers if you're interested in checking any of that out as well. And I've launched a second channel here on YouTube, which is called Lady of the Dawn Tarot. There's a link in the description box as well as in the channel section of my page for that. The format over there consists of picker cards and general energy check-ins related to subjects such as spirituality, ascension, wellness, and self-love. So if any of that sounds interesting, I invite you to check that channel out. I thank you for your support there as well as for your continued support here on this channel. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well. Hi, Group 2. You chose the Agate Palm Stone. So I'm going to start by taking a look at the energies that the person you are in no contact with is in right now. What's going on with them? Okay, so we've got the Four of Pentacles, which is Earth energy, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. King of Cups, which is water energy, Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Ten of Swords, which is air energy, Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. Strategy. Storm warning. And rest and rejuvenation. So the strategy card was bringing forth the word thwarted. So it feels like this person is very frustrated at this point in time. There's some kind of storm that is bubbling within them, where they're very frustrated. It feels like based on love or affection that they have for you that they are unable to extinguish. They may be trying to really stuff this down, suppress this, deny this, focus on things in the material world, kind of making a list of all the reasons why no contact is the best solution, why it is better to just stay apart from one another, why the decision that they had made in the past was in the highest good for everyone, or on the other side of that, kind of what's done is done. Their hands are tied with this Ten of Swords. It's too little too late. It's almost like they're making up a lot of excuses within themselves for inaction. As much as they're trying to be very passive with all of these kind of like streams of energy that are flowing, you know, into and around this person, it feels like despite their best efforts, they are unable to extinguish these feelings for you. There's a lot of signs and reminders and synchronicities and things that just keep popping up. Feels like very spontaneous kind of memories, a lot happening in the dream space. This is giving to me like Four of Swords energy. So in this passive place, there's a lot happening beneath the scenes, behind the scenes. A lot that's kind of coming in from their higher self in some manner, where they're unable to like shake this. They're unable to shake the memories of what happened in the past between you. They're unable to shake the connection, the energy of the connection, and it's leading to a lot of frustration at this point in time. It feels that they've tried many different things to either extinguish these feelings, to like bind these feelings to almost like a weighted sort of like stance, like chaining these things to a rock and just submerging them deep within the emotional body, just trying to like sink all of this down into a forgotten place, lock it up and throw away the key. And yet things keep surfacing, things keep coming back around, and it's leading to almost like a sense of volatility, a lot of inner conflict within themselves, almost where they're feeling like their mind is playing tricks on them in some manner, or that they're very much at war with themselves. They're at odds with themselves right now. because the logical mind is really telling them, stuff it, suppress it, it's too late, it's over, it's done with, things are better as they are, whatever the excuse or obstacle in the past and the situation is, they're leaning on that as what was done was what needed to be done. And yet the emotional space, these feelings keep wanting to resurface, they keep being revived, they keep being reborn and coming back around in all of these different kind of ways. And it feels like at times where this person's guard is not up, they almost find themselves kind of softening this stance, leaning back into this energy of like nostalgia and really good feelings, and then suddenly they're like shaking themselves awake and being very frustrated at that, this storminess, kind of like chastising themselves for in some way kind of like loosening the grip over stuffing all of this down, a lot of self-blame at this point in time, almost feeling that they are doing something wrong that is just perpetuating this connection. It feels very vexing for them, what has happened, these lingering feelings, and it feels like a bit of almost like pride and ego may be kind of an issue at this point in time. It may have been a wrong choice. It may have been sort of taking this connection for granted, opting for something that was like glitter and assuming that that would be gold, only to have that fizzle out, whether even that glittery energy was just the prospect of not investing in this connection, or whatever the nature of those excuses were in the past. It's almost just that they're clinging to that, like that's their story, that's the final decision, that's the verdict in this situation, period, end of story. And yet there's so much like that their higher self and that their emotional body has to say that's very contrary to what the ego has determined and what the logical mind has determined in the situation. So definitely a back and forth energy, a lot of fighting themselves, being very frustrated that they are unable to kind of move beyond or just kind of silence even the curiosity and the attention or the focus on the experiences with you in the past and these feelings in general. So I'm going to take a look at some of the blocks that they are dealing with right now, some of the obstacles that they're dealing with, and then we'll get into kind of the main event of this reading. Is reconciliation possible? If so, kind of when? What might that look like? But what are they kind of being confronted with? What is blocking that possibility at this point in time? Okay, so we have waterproof, mimicry, and play. So this is definitely somebody who is trying to avoid at all costs the emotional depths. This can be some guilt and shame on their part over their conduct in the past, especially if this is somebody who just like ghosted or blocked you. There's a part of them that is almost calling them to make the situation right, or is almost like a guilty conscience that is really telling them like, hey, this wasn't the best approach, this wasn't the right thing to do, this was hurtful, this was uncaring in some manner, even aside from kind of the resurrection of romantic feelings, just on like a karmic level or on like a human level, that in some way this wasn't a kind or nice or the right thing to do in this circumstance. It almost feels with this idea of mimicry that they're feeling very mocked and very betrayed at this point in time by that kind of voice of reason within them that is ushering them in the direction of an alternate path to what they had taken at this point, or previously in this situation. That idea of waterproof, it's tying into kind of this King of Cups energy where there are these emotions, and yet there's almost a willfulness of like, well, I'm not going to express that, I'm not going to show that, I'm not going to breathe life into that, I'm not going to honor that polarity, almost like trying to be very impervious to that, being very frustrated, of course, as well, that the efforts to just kind of dismiss that, focus on very like surface level things, surface level connections with the idea of play, different sort of distractions. It's tying into strategy of like all these different things that they're trying to sort of like silence or numb out. For some, this can even just be like drinking a lot, substances, different kind of things, different sort of playtime or activities or inputs or stimuli in the material world that keep the focus, keep the distraction away from that heart space, that it's an off limit sort of a thing, because with that, it feels to be so much more than just the truth of what they're harboring. This could have been somebody that like denied having feelings for you and was operating in direct contrast to the truth of their heart for whatever reason it is that they got spooked and just kind of acted that way. It's something where there's this nudge or this urge within them that they've taken a wrong turn in this situation. Their conduct, or even just the way that they handled the situation, it wasn't above board. It was something that like created unnecessary heartbreak, unnecessary hurt. It was coming from a place of dishonesty and avoidance in some manner within them. So they're almost like scolding themselves at this point in time and really battling that, avoiding, and a major kind of block here is really turning that gaze within and looking and sort of, taking that kind of tough love sort of approach, being very humbled. It's the energy, almost the word reckoning is coming through here. So definitely something where, their conduct, the point of no contact, when you went into separation, their actions since then, operating in direct contrast to some urge within themselves to do the right thing, or a different way that they should have handled it, or even just the truth of the nature of the feelings that they have for you, that for various reasons, maybe due to third-party situations, kind of aspects of you or the connection on a surface level that were somehow taboo or in like direct contrast to what they thought or believed their perfect partner should look like, and just how they handled all of that, the way in which they chose a path that was directly kind of opposed to the true nature of their feelings within. They're like fighting doing the right thing, but they're also not letting themselves off the hook for that. So there's a lot of kind of scolding and avoiding at this point in time, sort of looking within at kind of the pain, almost it feels like unnecessarily caused in this circumstance. Even if this is something where this person's feelings had changed, it feels like for a lot of you, they handled it in the really bad way. They could have handled it a lot better, a lot more compassionately, a lot more honestly. It feels like for a lot of you, this is somebody that just like took off. Just all of a sudden, there was the storm out of nowhere. They may have created some kind of chaos as like a ruse or a distraction, kind of like putting all the blame onto you. And it was really something within them that had shifted, where honesty and, having a heart-to-heart conversation could have not necessarily made the parting of ways easier, but it could have lessened the emotional toll on you. It feels like a lot of unanswered questions, and a lot of just where you were even kind of like blaming yourself for a period of time. Was it something you did? Was it something you said? Maybe this person even again just like projected onto you, and it's taken some time for you to kind of like heal and pick up the pieces. Maybe you're still wearing that cloak of whatever toxicity or sort of deception that they projected upon you. And so in some way they know deep down inside that this was not the best way to handle this. This was wrong, basically. This was not a kind thing to do. It was not a, self-loving. It was not, on a human-to-human level, it was not a respectful thing to do. It was not, they were acting like not with dignity in the past. And yet there's an avoidance of looking at that, because maybe this is just a tendency or a pattern for this person in the long term. And so, just sort of like going through the motions, continuing with all of this kind of like unhealed shadow, a very self-serving energy, kind of like stuffing and suppressing and denying feelings of guilt and shame even by almost overinflating the ego, and the inability of themselves to fully believe the story that they've made up within themselves, that they were in the right, they were justified for this. That feels to be the biggest kind of hindrance in this situation, is fighting themselves. Do I make this right? Do I make the effort? Or do I just continue sort of moving along in the status quo? So now I'm going to get into, is reconciliation possible in this circumstance? What might that look like? Okay, so we have the garden and the gate, indecision, never-ending story, and time to go. So it looks like in kind of the context of the near future, the immediate future, when I do readings and timing comes in as a factor, this isn't like forever and ever end a story, set in stone. That's not the way that energy works. Free will's a factor. Other factors are a factor. Things can change in an instant. So kind of the broadest range in just like a blanket sense that I look toward is like within the next year. And you can, pull that scope into more immediate than that. If you choose to apply these messages to like a forever and ever kind of thing, just whatever works with you. But for the intents and purposes of this reading right here, like in the near future, the probable outcome of this in kind of the widest range being like in the next 365 days, is reconciliation possible? In the current energies that this person is sitting in with the blocks that they are experiencing, and it feels like almost not dealing with at this point in time, it seems that they will continue to just be very like closed off to the necessary honesty and apology, the necessary declaration that would turn the tides in this situation. They almost just stay very fixed at this crossroads with the indecision right here. This is that battle between continuing forth in the status quo and almost kind of like the angel and the devil on their shoulders in a certain manner, where there's a part of them that is like, you need to make this right. You need to, kind of release the tension or the toxicity that has been created in this situation, or you need to honor the truth of your heart with this little heart that's contained here in the hourglass. This is like King of Pentacles energy and King of Cups energy, that there's, substantial feelings or something that needs to be addressed, fears that need to be addressed, ways in which they weren't above board with their conduct with you, or even deep feelings that they truly harbor within that they denied, stuffed, and suppressed. But with this idea of never-ending story, it's just more of that round and round. More time passes without getting to the heart of the matter, keeping those feelings on ice, keeping those feelings very locked down. It feels like something where the idea of, humbling themselves, opening up those lines of communication, taking steps in the direction of repairing the situation, it fills this person with a lot of dread, not just because they maybe fear facing you, fear the repercussions, fear even just seeing the pain in your eyes, having to really touch on aspects and areas of themselves that had really not been acting in the highest integrity, or again, ways in which they could have been more compassionate, more caring, more honest with themselves and with you about what was really going on, what really kind of pivoted them away. The idea of that fills them with a lot of fear, and so it feels like they just kind of like continue to stuff and suppress. Time to go. They continue along the path that they have been walking, which is coming up with these different strategies, different ways to kind of, stuff down, extinguish, distract, numb out, not address, deny, project outward, all of sort of what went wrong in this situation and their role in it. Continuing to kind of blame, continuing to sort of continue down the path that they've been walking. And again, this is not forever and ever energy, but it feels like, they're at least going to go through one more cycle of this. This may be something that very regularly, and perhaps even on an increasing basis, with the idea of like sands in the hourglass running out in a certain way, that they keep sort of, it's almost like a cycle that they go through in a way of running, stuffing, suppressing, and then they kind of feel like, okay, I succeeded at that, only to find these feelings, these, they haven't gone away, they're still there. Some kind of memory, some kind of reminder sort of sneaks in, and they're right back at that moment of, being in that heart space, being very aware, very inundated with the memories and the reality of what happened in the circumstance, finding themselves at that crossroads moment, like, are you going to do something to change this, or are you going to just continue to walk down this path? That's where sort of like the idea of being thwarted in all of these efforts comes to mind, and this storminess, this frustration within themselves, like, why can't I successfully outrun these feelings? So it feels like, again, at least one more cycle of that. So for the context of this reading, it does feel that they will remain kind of closed off at a distance, their back turned to the situation, continuing on the path sort of away from that point of making things right, speaking some kind of truth. More time passes by, and it almost feels that that's kind of a mockery in and of itself. That is on some level adding to this frustration, that it's kind of like each time they come back to this decision point, there's a part of them that is like, all this time has gone by, whatever that looks like, whether it's a short amount of time, long amount of time, you know, that's relative, but it's each time they make the choice to just continue along in this same pattern, part of them just groans about it. It's like, really? We're going to go down this road again? You're still not going to course correct. You're still not going to do the right thing for yourself and for this other person. You're still going to just continue on in your old stale ways. And again, for the context of this reading, that answer is yes. They're just continuing on in the status quo. So then that kind of, we'll see what comes through as far as some guidance that I'll get for you from spirit about this. But, you know, this may be something that it's at some point in time, you may need to seriously ask yourself, how much longer are you going to sit on this merry-go-round? If you're expecting this person to come back, maybe you've already detached and you're just checking in out of curiosity. And this can be a confirmation for your intuition that, yeah, they're still just in the status quo, and perhaps someday they'll figure it out. They'll, you know, detach from whatever this wounding is within themselves that caused them to behave in this way, to, you know, take this approach or utilize this tactic in this situation with you. But then, so, you know, time to go, maybe this sort of confirmation, even sort of a prelude to the guidance from spirit of just continue walking your path, continue moving forward, because this individual, at least for the next cycle, for the immediate future, you know, in that far range scope, they're still just very much stuck in the energy of kind of patterns, low vibrations, and a lot of like denial and stuffing within themselves. And it just doesn't feel like they're energetically in a place of being able to offer you anything as far as like measurable reconciliation, owning up to their role in what has happened and providing you like evidence of change, at least not in this present moment. So I'm going to see what other guidance spirit has for you about the situation. Okay, so we have freedom. So this is a confirmation that, you know, if you haven't already detached, even if you have, you know, healing it's not linear. It definitely comes in cycles. This reading may have been very triggering for you. You know, the more time that goes by, all of these kind of reminders that come in about this person, there may still be a lot of healing that you need to do. It's really bringing to mind the idea of sort of detaching yourself emotionally, not waiting and expecting for this person to come back around with an apology, you know, to see the light and do anything about that, but really find ways to be that source of healing for yourself in a more profound manner. Definitely checking in with yourself, any ways that you've taken on blame or things that this person may have said or their conduct, and how you've internalized that as, you know, feeling that it's a reflection of something kind of like wrong or broken within you. It feels very evident, you know, and everybody has their own kind of like degree of shadows that they're dealing with on certain levels, but it feels like this individual is dealing with a lot of sort of like unhealed wounds. They have a tendency to just kind of like fly the coop, to just sort of run away when things get very intense. That's something within themselves they need to address, or they're just going to keep sort of repeating the same series of patterns over and over again in their life through different sort of circumstances. You can't do the work for them. All you can really do is, you know, open and expand your mind to the possibility of what lessons or experiences can this situation afford you? What ways can you choose to become more loving, more open and receptive to love, rather than being jaded and kind of like weighed down, or having your self-esteem or self-worth eroded by this individual's inability to recognize and appreciate your value and the love that you had to give, by not treating you with integrity, by not honoring and respecting your feelings, and, you know, being very just kind of with this idea of play, you know, it's like an immature energy. It's kind of a self-serving energy at this point in time. So the biggest takeaway, the biggest lesson from this circumstance and what spirit wants you to focus on at this point in time is doing that healing work within yourself from whatever has happened with this no contact circumstance, you know, the time that goes by and kind of the wounds within you which won't heal. It might be in your best interest to become that source of kind of restoration, balance, and healing for yourself. Not wait for this person's return, and just continue to move forward with the expectation of their inability to appreciate your value and reciprocate that does not need to dictate the future of love connections that you can encounter. There will be people out there who will treat you with integrity, who will treat you with respect, who will reciprocate with you in kind. And so, you may have given this situation a lot of time. So for some of you, this can be this confirmation that it might be a good idea to detach, maybe just for now, maybe for the long term, maybe forever. That'll be up to you. That'll be revealed kind of like further down the path. But really check in with yourself and make sure that you're being very kind and loving to yourself at this point in time as you are, detaching and healing from what has occurred and even expectations of what you have hoped might happen. But according to the energies here, it doesn't really seem like that is on the horizon for this situation. So now is the time to really go in, love yourself, and heal and pick up the pieces as best as you can from this circumstance. So I'm going to get some initials, and this can be a first, middle, or last name of you or this person, or it could spell something out, just whatever resonates for you. Okay, we've got Y, B, Q, Z, D, O, G, and F. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, or share. If you'd like a personal reading, I offer them through my Etsy shop, and there's a link in the description box of the video for that. I offer a variety of pre-recorded video readings, written readings, and channeled letters. Turnaround time on everything is 5 to 7 days from the time of purchase. I also sell handmade jewelry, dream catchers, and sun catchers if you're interested in checking any of that out as well. And I've launched a second channel here on YouTube, which is called Lady of the Dawn Tarot. There's a link in the description box as well as in the channel section of my page for that. The format over there consists of pick-a-cards and general energy readings related to subjects such as spirituality, ascension, wellness, and self-love. So if any of that sounds interesting, I invite you to check that channel out. I thank you for your support there, as well as for your continued support here on this channel. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well. Hi, Group 3. You chose the Lapis Lazuli Palm Stone. So I'm going to start by looking at what energies are the person that you are in no contact with. What energies is this person in right now? What's going on with them? Okay, we've got the Seven of Swords, which is air energy, Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. The High Priestess, which is Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Seven of Cups, which is water energy, Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Strategy. Anxiety. And community. So with the energies of illusion, sneakiness, and mystery in the kind of vibrations of where this person is at, it is quite likely that they are watching you, perhaps on social media, from some kind of a fake profile, sleuthing around, doing research, trying to find out, are you available? Are you single? What's going on in your life? What's going on in your reality? What they're seeing, what they're discovering, even if there's a lack of information, if they're looking around and they can't find anything good or bad. It feels like this is giving them a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of anxiety. There's a sense of panic almost. It's bringing to mind kind of like, what have I done kind of energy here. What's going on with this person, like the need to know in some manner. It's tying into the idea of they may have never fully detached from you. They may have been watching you this whole time, watching you for a long time, kind of checking back in periodically, trying to fly under the radar. At times they may have been very successful in this, but with this high priestess, this is also the energy of intuition in a certain sense. And so it almost feels like a part of you may know that they've been keeping tabs on you. You know that they've been watching. They know you know they've been watching. So it's a lot of like unspoken sort of energy here. It's bringing to mind the idea of kind of feeling most comfortable in the shadows, because there still is a bit of sort of like uncertainty in a manner as far as this Seven of Cups, and then we've got the community, which is bringing to mind like Three of Cups here. Like adding this all up is sort of this idea of like Ten of Cups, like the emotional fulfillment in some manner, but it's segmented. It's kind of broken apart. Maybe something having to do with a third party situation in the past that, eroded trust. Maybe something where they'd chosen to move in another direction and very quickly found out that that was not all it was cracked up to be. And there's a lot of like panic again, like what have I moved away from? What did I sabotage? This could have even been third party in the form of people, friends or family who questioned or disapproved of the connection. This could have to do with third party like heartbreaks, ways in which their heart was closed off, an ex they weren't completely over, or that they hadn't fully healed and recovered. And even if they had put themselves out there as far as dating and romance, in all actuality they may have quickly discovered, or it was very much like triggered very soon or suddenly within them, that they still had a lot of unhealed aspects, a lot of trust issues within themselves. Trust could have been broken, or there was almost a fear of betrayal in some manner in the past that may have caused them to kind of kick over the foundation that the two of you were building with one another before it even really got started or was firmly rooted, or kind of like a little bit of self-sabotage, like best to just kind of toss it all away rather than kind of risk entering into, the arena of heartbreak again. Feels like a decision they almost immediately regretted if that was the case. And a bit of this energy of sort of like, the segmentation right here is this hesitation to fully trust in the investment of coming back around into the situation. There may be strategy, plans put in place, a lot of this kind of like sleuthing energy, gathering of information, plotting, planning, scheming, watching from the bushes, watching from the tree, just kind of like fake profiles, some of them very, convincing, others of them very sloppy, little sort of like clues and innuendos. It's giving to mind the idea of like little games that they're playing, that there's kind of like two sides of them. There's the public face, which is the no contact face. And then there's almost like these little smoke signals that they're trying to send out in a manner, maybe even things that you are unaware of, but that they, in their kind of daily goings on, it's like, well, maybe this message will get to them. Maybe they'll see this on my social media. Maybe they're watching too. And it's something to where there is a need or like a disconnect. There's a need to bridge the gap, but currently there's like a disconnect between merging these two worlds, kind of the public face and this sort of like behind the scenes, the impression that they're giving, the words that they are, in a no contact situation, not speaking, versus kind of like this little secretive communication, these little sort of surreptitious sort of messages and these little innuendos. So it's a bit of kind of game playing at this point in time, but it feels like you have their attention. For a lot of you, you've continued to have their attention despite what has happened, despite what they've said, despite their even maybe sneaking off, running off, ghosting you. They kept an eye. It almost feels that they didn't mean for this much distance to be created. They almost just needed some breathing room or space in the past, but didn't know how to articulate that in some manner. That can also tie into this idea of strategy, like, oh no, what have I done? I didn't mean for things to go this far. I didn't mean for all of this kind of like snowball effect, all of this to kind of like unravel in the way it did. And so plans, ideas, thoughts, kind of like, weighing the pros and cons of the situation. Should they continue on in this energy? Is this situation salvageable? Can they find a way back in? Is trust kind of like permanently broken, or can this be rebuilt in some manner? This is the energy of what they're in right now. A lot of focus, a lot of behind the scenes, deep in their like feeling space, but very almost caught up in the possibilities of sort of like what if, both positive and negative. A lot of sort of like fantasy thinking and, almost trying, it feels like if this is something where this, if it's an online only connection, this would definitely be something where, they're making a point to like seek you out, seek your profile out, watch you from afar. If this is something where this is somebody in like your physical reality, in your community, for example, somebody who lives near you or even a little bit of a distance, but they are accessible to you, like not on the other side of the country or, not on the other side of, the state or something, but where they could like drive to you in a day. They could get there pretty easily. It's like the next town over, on the other side of town. Down the street, whatever that would look like. It almost feels to be something where they go out of their way to try and like run into you somewhere, making it look just like an accident. Oh, funny running into you. That kind of an energy, or making a point to kind of like be places where they think that you would be in order to get kind of a closer view, a closer vantage point, that in some way just kind of whatever spying they're doing in this manner, it's like they keep sort of inching in closer, wanting to sneak a peek, almost wanting to get caught, it feels like, and to have you be the one to sort of call them out on this energy, which might be, at this point, it feels like the strategy they're leaning toward to potentially break the ice. Like if you saw them, if you caught wind of them, if you discovered them in some way and you chose to move forward with that, then it would get them off the hook in some manner. It would make that sort of introduction a lot easier for them. So that feels to be the energy that they're in currently. I'm going to look at some of the blocks or obstacles that they are dealing with at this point in time, and then we'll get into kind of the main portion of this reading, which is reconciliation possible? Is this likely? Is this something that's going to happen in this situation? Okay, so we have ghosts, insight, and distraction. Yeah, so this ghost energy, this is confirming like some kind of a meddlesome ex that was an issue in the past. Third-party energies. This can even just be, the ghosts of heartbreak past, where if this person was very enthusiastic, everything was really going fine, and all of a sudden they ghosted you. They just ran one day. No explanation. Pulled a 180. Everything was all of a sudden different. This is really tying into something within them, whatever, and it's going to be different what the nature of that looks like. Maybe it was a fear of betrayal. Maybe it was, tendencies within themselves that were leaning toward sneaky behavior in the past that they had struggled to sort of overcome in some way. They found themselves leaning more into that and sort of pulled the plug on the situation before it could come toppling down, almost like running before they could look like the bad guy or the bad girl, but then kind of falling into that title anyway in a certain manner based on how they approach the situation. This could be like a fear of vulnerability, a fear of falling in love, a fear of losing themselves to the connection, whatever those kind of like repeating fears or something that somebody from their past, maybe this was family, maybe this is a romantic partner, it's a toxicity, it's a box of darkness that somebody gave them that is an unhealed shadow that they're still contending with. It was activated, triggered, opened, awakened within them at some point in this connection. It feels like that most likely led to them running or to the no contact, and they still haven't sufficiently dealt with that. They're still just kind of adding more time with the idea of like this little jar and these kind of pebbles that are being stacked into it. That the lid's off, the lid is off this kind of box of darkness that they've been triggered, that has been activated. They've had a reaction to that. This circumstance has been created between the two of you, and yet they're not diving in. There's a resistance to kind of like heal themselves. There's a resistance to let go of this woundedness, almost a confusion about how to even approach this circumstance, a fear of what kind of diving into those emotional waters, maybe even a fear of intimacy, partnership, and connection, a sense of losing themselves, drowning in these emotions, not wanting to expose themselves to the pain and disappointment of heartbreak and loss again. So they've essentially become that agent of heartbreak and loss themselves in order to not be on the receiving end of it. That feels to still be a block at this point in time. It's almost a lack of insight in the form of they're looking all around at these other possibilities rather than sort of like looking directly in the mirror and seeing how maybe even heartbreak from the past, some ex that they haven't even necessarily wanted back in their life, yet this person, that incident, that occurrence still has an energetic hold on them. There's still a cord attaching. That person or that experience is still a puppet master in real time to this individual and is almost tethering them or has a leash or a restraint on them that has not allowed them to fully dive in and be very present and consistent in other loving connections. But there's almost a lack of being able to connect the dots. It's tying to that idea of like the 10 of Cups, but it's disconnected. They don't know how to move beyond this. They're not quite seeing the full picture here of what the root of all this is. The idea here of distraction as well is really tying in with anxiety. They're getting very tangled up in their head, wanting to move forward, wanting to kind of break the ice in this situation, but not really sure how to do that, getting very lost up in the possibilities of making matters worse, a fear of even like if they open that door, here they are confronting this kind of box of darkness again that they haven't dealt with at this point in time. So it's almost like fixating and focusing on what's going on with you, what you're doing, what's happening in your life, who you're talking to, who you may be involved with, who you are developing romance with, all these different things. It's a distraction from this work that they are needing to do within to heal and to release and to kind of shut the door on some aspect of themselves previously or some kind of third party interference in the form of like a person, an idea, or an experience. So it's a lot of kind of like looking in the wrong direction, focusing on the wrong thing, almost like staring at the destination of what they might like to achieve in this situation, which is another opportunity, another chance, but being still very tethered to, whatever that kind of wall was that they hit in the situation previously that caused their behavior, their reaction, their running, they're pushing you away, they're ghosting, they're blocking. They still haven't dealt with that. They still don't know how to deal with it, how it's possible. It's almost like they lack the tools in some manner. Rather than kind of just like fixating and focusing on what's going on with you, it doesn't feel that they are using this time of no contact to their greatest advantage. They're not doing the self-healing. They're not seeking out answers to that. They're not introspecting. They're very much like in an outward projected manner, kind of looking, it feels like almost to this energy of sort of like if they bring you back in, that will silence in some way the pain that they are still holding on to that has been unearthed through this box of darkness. They're kind of looking at the solution to that from the wrong angle, in a sense, that you will fix that, you will heal that. You're what they need to feel better, rather than kind of like diving in and creating that betterment within themselves. So this almost is something that, because of the approach that they're taking, a lot of this like spiritual bypassing in a manner that they're not able to effectively kind of like leapfrog at this point beyond sort of the block, beyond the barrier, beyond the no contact situation, because they're missing these crucial steps inside. They're being tethered. They can only stretch so far. All they can do is watch. All they can do is research. All they can do is drive by your house. The idea of opening those lines of contact, there's a part of them that knows like, hey, you're bringing this big shadow along with you. Remember how that interfered the last time. You haven't released that yet. And so it's almost like they're kind of getting in their own way in that capacity at this point in time. So I'm going to look now and see, is reconciliation possible? What might that look like? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Okay, so we have dawn, new beginning, island, solitude, a leg up, and imagine. So it does look like reconciliation is possible. Some kind of birth, some kind of growth can happen in this situation, but it feels to be something that is almost further out on the horizon and is again contingent on this person going within and doing some kind of healing work. So for the immediate sort of future, it continues to be something, or with this figure here kind of like reaching up to this moon, they continue to almost like reach for your light in some way in order to sort of distract themselves from the growth that they need to do. Or it's kind of like the level of awareness, what they've utilized this time apart toward at this point. They're almost like they're not fully formed in the capacity where they're able to reach that place where successful reconciliation is possible, at least in like the proximity of immediate future, like real time, kind of like surrounding the energies of this reading. This is definitely something that I would describe this as like never say never. It's something where they're getting closer every day to that. Also with this, baby polar bear here kind of climbing on this mama polar bear, where they again are sort of like reaching for your light, looking to you as some kind of a solution, some kind of way to fast track work that they are needing to do within themselves. So this may be something that, the actions even in the immediate future are just this reaching, kind of fumbling the ball, coming forth in this very like, childlike energy, more of that immaturity, more of those game playing, more of that kind of sneakiness and, fake profiles that maybe aren't so fake, it's kind of sloppy. You can see right through it. You can see them kind of like they know that it's more of this just watching from the shadows and kind of picking at the situation from that angle. But it feels like because of this, like they don't get very far with that. They keep just being almost like stuck or frozen in time, to where it leads to this inevitable period of like they're not getting anywhere with these actions, and it forces them to go within this idea of like island solitude. They need this time within themselves. It feels that they take this time within themselves. They keep hitting a wall, or they keep almost being, these plans almost sort of fall apart. There continues to be more of this like anxiety gleaned from watching, from the known and from the unknown, that kind of just, the anxiety almost gives way to some kind of depression, some kind of crashing, like a crash and burn kind of energy. This may even talk about like a forcible sort of series of tower moments that the universe is like, hey, you're not using this situation to your best advantage. Quit looking outward and go within and heal. And they may be forced to sort of enter into that terrain. It is that place that is the bridge, that is the, forging of this new future. But again, this idea of dawn, like this gradual emergence, it's around the bend. It's not something that's like tomorrow they're going to be at this place of readiness to be able to bring you anything more than kind of like this immature energy. But this is not a completely hopeless situation. It's something where they gradually start to get this illumination that the direction, the approach they're taking in this circumstance, it's getting them nowhere. It's not the proper vibration. It continues to be something very elusive, that whatever these tactics are to like get your attention, it's not working. These efforts to kind of like fast track, it's not working. Just kind of continuing to fixate and look and research, it's not getting anywhere. It's just compounding this sense of urgency. The more they see you, they see your glow up, they recognize your worth, they see you moving on in different ways in your life. That in and of itself can be that tower moment that kind of pivots them into that place of isolation where they're alone with their thoughts. They can then, from that place, we've got this lone tree here on this island, then growth is possible. It starts from the inside, then they're able to bring something forth to you in the outer realms. And this feels, usually with readings, always with readings, unless there's like a real specific time frame, the farthest out that I think it's appropriate or viable or realistic to kind of pose any sort of question, because energies change, Free will's a factor. Outside circumstances change, inside circumstances change. There's a lot of moving parts that affect energies. So the farthest out I'm ever comfortable, or I feel it's applicable or appropriate to look at something, is like a 365-degree bubble, or 365 days rather. That's kind of the outskirts. Beyond that, it all is theory at that point in time. And even on that energy of an outskirt, that's kind of like stretching it to the outer limits. That's stretching it really thin as far as, being able to kind of pick up on most likely actions. So it feels like over the course of the next, year, or kind of whatever this cycle looks like, this can be something that starts tomorrow, and that proximity can tie into, over the course of the next month, the next few months, the next 6 months. It's going to be different for everybody, but it feels like this person will continue to sort of hit a wall. They'll continue to kind of like not get anywhere with the approach that they've made up to this point in time and are making currently in this situation. You continue to remain very out of reach. You continue to grow and expand and evolve almost beyond the place they left you, or just in your life in general. And it's something which kind of puts them in this energy of despair, of kind of like going within. That's where the magic happens. That's where the growth happens. That's where facing that box of darkness, releasing those ghosts of the past, becomes probable and possible, to where they are then able to emerge on the other side of that with this personal illumination, with kind of this aha moment of, the ways and the means and the tools. Maybe this is things they research, things that are just kind of, the downloads, or like these spontaneous healings, even just whatever that looks like, through their kind of time out almost with spirit in a way, that it's a process of personal internal alchemy that leads them to this place of being able to reemerge. So it does feel that reconciliation is possible. This may be something that's a little bit further out on the horizon for a lot of you, because it requires them to go within first, to grow up, to grow out of these patterns, to release this hurt, this fear, whatever that lack is, whatever the tendency is, whatever that shadow is that got in the way of the harmony of this situation. It's got to go in order for this person to grow, in order for this person to be able to bring growth energy to you in the connection. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility, but it feels to be something that there's still more time that is necessary for them to kind of like transform and to almost become reimagined into a different version of who they are, that's able to bring forth measurable change to you. So I'm going to get some guidance from Spirit now about the situation. Okay, and we've got leadership. And interestingly, there's another polar bear right there. So this is really this energy of 3, and kind of this polar bear that's in silhouette. This is really talking about, divine intervention, the divine working on this situation, aside from, even kind of the element of romance. There are larger kind of spiritual lessons at play here. This situation, this circumstance, maybe even just been a teaching tool for the two of you to grow and evolve on some level. So this is really indicating, take the initiative, take the lead to continue to face your own personal darkness and shadows. This person is watching. And so, energetically, you can teach them through, continuing to move through your own evolution, your own glow up, whatever sort of direction you're focusing on, your path moving forward, cultivating abundance mentality within yourself. This is definitely something that through this observation, they can be encouraged or be given a roadmap in some way about somewhere to start, some vibration to sort of reach for within themselves. Taking the initiative to continue to press forth, understanding that this person, again, with the silhouette bear there, they still are not fully formed. There's still some things that need to be kind of released and need to come into being within themselves before they're at a place of readiness to take action towards you, to where promises made, words that are spoken have corresponding actions that are reliable and trustworthy, so that the two of you can rebuild the connection together. So continuing to forge forward, trusting that in the time and manner they're meant to, and kind of at the behest of Spirit, who is working with them behind the scenes, who will continue to kind of oversee this connection and continue to try and guide and navigate this person into that direction of growth and healing, trusting knowing that on the other side of all of that, that reconciliation, you know, it's possible in this situation. There are no guarantees. There's free will. There's a lot of moving parts. There's other factors. You know, you could meet somebody else. They could only dive so deep and then decide to just kind of discontinue that shadow work. Like, there's just so many other unpredictable factors that the best thing that you can do is press forward toward the cultivation and actualization of abundance within yourself, for yourself first and foremost, reaching for other things that you are wanting to cultivate in your life, in your material world. And it is from that place of being very proactive in the direction of growth that you harness that proper vibration to receive this person in their evolved form further down the line. So I'm going to get some initials, and this can be a first, middle, or last name of you or this person, or it could spell something out, just whatever resonates for you. Okay, we've got V, B, H, D, Z, U, N, E, and S. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, or share. If you'd like a personal reading, I offer them through my Etsy shop, and there's a link in the description box of the video for that. I offer a variety of pre-recorded video readings, written readings, and channeled letters. Turnaround time on everything is 5 to 7 days from the time of purchase. I also sell handmade jewelry, dream catchers, and sun catchers if you're interested in checking any of that out as well. And I've launched a second channel here on YouTube, which is called Lady of the Dawn Tarot. There's a link in the description box as well as in the channel section of my page for that. The format over there consists of pick-a-cards and general energy readings related to subjects such as spirituality, ascension, wellness, and self-love. So if any of that sounds interesting, I invite you to check that channel out. I thank you for your support there, as well as for your continued support here on this channel. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well. Hi, Group 4. You chose the pink Tourmaline. So I'm going to start by looking at the current energies with the person you're in no contact with. What is going on with them right now? Okay, so we've got the Ace of Wands, which is fire energy, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Ten of Pentacles, which is earth energy, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. The Hanged Man, which is Pisces. Second chakra, Archangel Ariel. Fourth chakra, Archangel Raphael. And Magician in the Mirror. So something has been activated or reactivated within this person when they think about you. This may be something where they were kind of closed off in the heart space. They may have been very triggered and kind of recoiled or ran from you in the past. There's been some kind of breakthrough energy, some kind of energy transference between the two of you. This is like Kundalini energy, heart chakra activation. It's something that even with the look on this magician's face and the magician in the mirror, it's kind of small. I don't know if you can see that, but he just looks really stunned. Like, what is happening? I don't know what's going on, but I like it. Something to where there's a lot of like awestruck kind of energy here, a lot of intensity. It's bringing to mind the idea of somebody who's on like a roller coaster and just sort of holding on, really kind of like terrified and at the same time just elated, having a lot of fun in kind of the thick of this energy right now, which might be quite a change of pace from what they were in before. This idea of Hanged Man is like a change perspective in some manner. The intensity, the initial kind of activation that may have taken place, it feels like something they've almost acclimated to in a way, and they're really liking it. They're really liking kind of the ebb and flow, the exchange of energies between the two of you. Something that like when they see your photo, when they think of you, even something where it's kind of like these activations or these exchanges of energy, just somehow there's kind of this inner knowing that it's connected to you, it's connected to the connection in some way. This Ten of Pentacles is tying into the idea of they may have started to do research about energy, soul connection, heart chakra activation, Kundalini awakening, simply just out of the fact that this can even be somebody who has experienced these things and they may have gone to see a doctor, for example, and nothing is wrong with them. They've exhausted all kind of like conventional or mainstream sort of reasons for these things, and they've had to sort of think outside the box in some manner. They've had to sort of stretch their mind and their imagination, and what they're finding, it's resonating, it's clicking for them, it's providing them with a lot of answers and just kind of like mind-blowing sort of energy, a sense of kind of awe at the power and intensity that again is really being kind of activated within them. A lot of creative energy, a lot of things happening as far as dreams and synchronicities and kind of like all this sort of serendipity and this really just sort of like the world in between worlds and just this mystery and mysticism in some way that they're tying back to you into this experience. They've been able to sort of like piece back together and retrace their steps to the point of meeting you, the point of intersecting with you. That was kind of ground zero. That's where everything changed. Rather than sort of like running from this, denying it and stuffing it down, they're finding value in this. They're finding meaning in this. They're starting to kind of like work with these energies. It may have even been that during the no contact situation, energetically speaking, they've acclimated somewhat. The distance has served the situation well to where they could almost like catch their breath in a manner, and have some time and have some space to do their own research, to really feel into this, to figure it out for themselves. And their perspective about you in this situation is starting to open up to something new, something different, rather than kind of like recoiling and focusing too much on sort of like all the mundane reasons that the connection wouldn't work, why it's too different, why this is too intense, it's too scary, it's too much, it's something that they don't want. They're moving more into this idea of wanting to kind of like with the idea of the magician, co-create a new beginning, wanting to reinvest more and to see what could this lead to? This idea of mirroring as well. This can tie into sort of what you've been going through, the ways in which you've been trying to learn to work with or understand this connection. They're now in their own way and in their own form, which may take a different form than yours. It may be something where, you're part of communities, you're openly discussing these things, you're, very actively kind of seeking these things out. They may be a little bit with this Hanged Man kind of doing it in a roundabout way, not necessarily wanting to out themselves in some manner, not talking about, energy and the experiences like this with other people around them, but kind of just silently observing and taking note, kind of food for thought sort of energy, but it's expanding their mind in a certain way, to where they're starting to recognize and realize the nature of like parallel paths that the two of you are walking. And if they don't have all the pieces to kind of fit together at this point, about the probability of like re-intersecting with one another, there is a sense of like feeling you across the distance through the turbulence of what has been happening to them. Even though there's distance, this very visceral energetic effect is nevertheless still occurring, and there's a sense of feeling a little less lonely, a little less isolated, a little less confused about this process, because they're now able to like decipher or pick up on your energetic presence with them, even if they don't have a way to define that, even from like a higher self level. They just sense and feel you around them. They're in receiving mode at this point in time. You're even like efforts on yourself to create balance, to kind of like go with the flow of the situation. It feels to be something that has sent out a ripple effect across time and space that is almost providing this person with some kind of reassurance that it's okay. There's no reason to panic. You help them almost catch their breath in a manner of speaking through this kind of process. So where they're at right now is starting to really recognize the value of having met you, the value of having encountered you. They're almost through the worst of that initial kind of like activation and turn on mode. Some time has passed. There's a little bit of balance that has happened. Again, that idea of like gathering some information. They're starting to calm down. They're not freaking out as much. And they're starting to look at kind of like, how can we build and grow from this point in time, seeing things from a different angle. Perhaps even with this hanged man, this can talk about kind of like watching from afar, but almost like fly on the wall sort of energy. So this can tie into, kind of like peeking around the corner at you in terms of like fake profiles in some way, or just kind of like cloaking, going incognito, anonymously, just kind of observing anything you put on social media. It feels not even necessarily to be like old photographs. This is, or, conversations, but this is like real-time observation of sort of even just what they're able to decipher energetically about sort of trying to match and mirror their vibration or their posturing, or, what you're focusing on, what you're doing, what you're creating, what you're putting out there, how you're presenting yourself. They're mimicking this in some way, or mirroring that, or kind of using that as a gauge to sort of calibrate how they flow through this energy, through this situation, looking to you as kind of this, like this teacher. There's a wisdom there that they're wanting to kind of glean from you in some way, energetically tapping in, feeling very connected to you at the heart level. This is something where they may be kind of experimenting even with like sending you loving vibrations. They're receiving them most likely, most definitely from you, and most likely have some level of understanding, even if it's not like the complete picture, even if they don't know exactly how all the pieces fit together, but there's a sense of like, the origin point is you. Whatever kind of calm in the storm is, whatever your like prayers or the loving space you're holding them at within yourself as you're going through your own journey, it's something which is being registered and received by them with this Pentacles energy on a very like conscious level in some manner. So they're kind of leaning into the energy of gratitude for you, and rather than kind of like fighting and working against this connection, rather than fighting this, they're allowing themselves to be transmuted from the inside out by this energy. So it's a very beautiful energy right now of somebody who's not exactly sure. They're kind of just like swinging along with this. They still have like one foot in the old version of themselves. They're not completely in this energy of full surrender to this process, to this connection, to this experience, but there's a lot more wiggle room than there was before. There's a lot more flexibility. There's a curiosity which has been sparked, ignited, or reignited, something through this process of activation and opening, maybe even very independently of you. Just the nature of this energy. This can be like twin flame kind of energy right here, spiritual awakening energy, that it's like a process was activated and it has continued to take place. Those openings, those cleansing, those regulating, those apertures created within this person, they are now rendered more capable to receive that higher vibrational energy that flows between you and through this connection, and which is accessible through the nature and the dynamic of that. So it's almost something that has just organically taken place without their participation. It's just happened. They've kind of been pivoted to the point in this journey of expansiveness, a lot of growth and maturity out of the fearful energy they may have been in previously. So I'm going to take a look at some of the blocks and obstacles that they're dealing with at this point in time before I get into kind of the meat of this reading, which is, is reconciliation possible? What's that look like? How might that unfold for you? Okay, so we have displacement, abundance, and freedom. So this idea of freedom and displacement, this can definitely tie into if there's third-party situations involved on either your end or their end. These things are still blockages or hindrances. This may be relationships with other people, even to some degree their relationship with themselves, a bit of kind of that they're sort of like midstream in this process of like an ego death, some part of them that needs to dissolve in order to be reborn, in order to coagulate into the next version of themselves that they're still kind of clinging to, or even more than that, that it's still a process which hasn't fully completed. They're not quite on the other side of that. So in terms of like with the nature of that idea of like the ego needing to sort of fall away in order for, the more authentic version of them to sort of be reborn out of that place. It feels to be something where it's not a block they're deliberately putting in place. This ties into, just an organic process which needs to take place. Divine timing being literally a factor in that it's sort of like if they could snap their fingers and overnight be in this transformed space, they would, but that's just not the nature of what's taking place. That they have moved from beyond this kind of like full revulsion, full kind of recoiling, full fear mode about this energy, about this situation, about their feelings for you. They've leaned in. They're kind of like stepping into that fire. They're looking into that void of possibility, but there's still some journeying. There's a process of them being reimagined in some way in order to come out on the other side and step forth into the next manifestation of what's possible in this situation. This idea, though, of tying back into, if there are like literal third parties involved in this situation, there may be a bit of kind of like clinging to creature comforts, not wanting to upset that balance in their kind of like routine, mundane life. Anything that's established, anything that's been long term, which may have been long past its expiration date. This may have been a toxic situation they or you have been clinging to for quite some time. And there could be almost with this idea of like mirroring that this might be kind of like a shared story for a lot of people, where there's things that both of you are needing to kind of like release or move beyond. That could be romances, friendship, family, some kind of like a job situation, the relationship with self. But there's a sense of kind of like clinging to that because it's stable and known. There's an unwillingness, at least at this point in time, to fully release that. A sense of almost this person trying to move very quietly, to not be too vocal, to not rock the boat of their material circumstance. Again, this idea of like a foot in two different worlds. There's this person that they're becoming, and there's also the ways in which they're trying to kind of like do the dance and fit in with the life that they had previously created for themselves, or that they had, just been going through the motions of prior to encountering you. So it's this liminal space of like this in-between place, a bit of fear of change as well, with abundance here in this kind of obstacle position, a fear of lack, a fear of losing themselves, losing even the parts of themselves that they disliked, a fear of, saturating themselves so much with love, loving the unlovable parts, which could just be, again, like this 180-degree turn from how they have been used to kind of associating or relating to themselves on some level. So there's change that's happening, but they're they feel barred at this point in time, or just it's something that's still in the works. It's still in this process from having like a full or deep understanding of the nature and purpose of this. And it feels like to some degree they may also be trying to kind of cling to a bit of logic, rather than being fully just kind of grounded and yet flowing in the etheric elements of this situation. They're trying to kind of figure things out, gather information, quantify the situation. They're not fully in this energy of flow and trust. And that feels to be some kind of, it's a process of detachment, of kind of like leaning into that, just as they've acclimated at this point from that initial kind of like spark, the point, where they ran or pivoted away from you. It feels to be something that in time they will acclimate more and kind of get their bearings and learn how to navigate more in that energy of flow. But at the point they're at this time, it's kind of like a foot in two worlds, not quite at that more developed version of themselves energetically or consciousness wise, in order to be able to openly kind of like step forth, come out of like the shadows and just this sort of like energetic dialogue back and forth, but also not in the energy of kind of like the freshly awakened individual, the freshly activated individual that they were when you went into that no contact situation. So in terms of blocks, relatively speaking, these seem to be things that are actively in real time, constantly in this process of being like whittled away, consciously by them, and also through kind of like this divine intervention energy. So I'm going to get into the heart of this reading. Is reconciliation possible? Is it likely? Is it on the horizon? What's that look like? Okay, so we have time for a nap, iceberg submerged, crystals focus, and chop wood. So this idea with crystals here, and also, kind of like the clear, watery energy of ice and iceberg, this is all giving me like crown chakra energy, ascension energy. Reconciliation is contingent on this person continuing to climb and be almost pivoted through this process of awakening, which again is like happening in real time. We've got sacral chakra, heart chakra. They need to keep going. They need to kind of raise up into their personal truth with the throat, trust that intuition and kind of inner vision, that inner knowing with the third eye, and really tap into that source consciousness, their relationship with higher self, to navigate the next steps of their journey with you, and also their journey in life moving forward with that crown chakra. So with that, when they come into that place of alignment, which again, they're a lot farther than kind of like ground zero, that root chakra, where that sort of, where they began, where this situation began. They have made progress, but there's still growth that is necessary before true reconciliation can happen in this situation. So it feels like something with time for a nap, that, there's still kind of more of a period of waiting, but it's almost something, it's a very restorative period. It feels to be something that kind of like the worst of the resistance is over. With chopped wood, that has been discarded, that has been transcended in some manner. So that through kind of like this next phase of, the no contact, it's a continued period of kind of like eliminating the blocks and barriers within, to fully surrender to the transformative energy of this connection. This definitely feels like my twin flame pile right here. A very kind of like supercharged, very visceral, very electric feel to this energy, to where it's more than just the romance. It's more than just the reconciliation in this situation. There's something where both of you fundamentally, with that magician in the mirror, are being transformed, energetically speaking, into kind of like this optimal vibration of what you are capable of harnessing here on the earth plane. It's the anchoring of light in a very high vibrational manner. And the future of what kind of is possible in this circumstance, it lies on the other side of your personal growth and transformation. The idea with iceberg here, and a lot that's hidden, what you're seeing at the surface, kind of that surface element of love and romance and partnership, that is just the tip of what the nature and purpose, it feels like, of your interacting with one another, the processes that are taking place, the very kind of like conscious fears, those sort of like surface level blocks and obstacles. There's something more at play here. There's almost like aspects and areas of your energies individually and how you relate to one another energetically from a distance that are needing to be almost like brought up to speed or tuned up in some manner, so that when you come into closer proximity, when you come into that energy of reconciliation and reunion, it's almost like a force of power. You're both able to kind of like sustain the very intense nature of that energetic exchange, because as they're at this point in time individually, and as you are most likely at as well, you've acclimated from that initial kind of like zap of awakening, that initial sort of spark between the two of you. There's still more of a period of like needing to further grow, energetically speaking, needing to further develop, needing to further familiarize yourself with the dynamic of give and take and the intensity and nature of this energy in order to create a successful sort of like reunion with one another. So as far as kind of like a scope of time is concerned, the furthest I'm ever sort of like comfortable reading in terms of time with any reading in general, what I think is, the most kind of appropriate or realistic is usually like a year out. Like 365 days is the furthest I believe one is able to truly like look and glean as far as like possible or probable outcomes, because there are so many different moving parts and factors. There's internal resistance, there's outside circumstances, there are, other people that are involved, there's, internal things that are involved, there's free will, there's all these possible variables to where beyond that, it gets so murky of like, it's impossible to say. The further and further you get out on the horizon, like, oh, well, this is the destination. So this doesn't feel to be something that, it's kind of like it'll never happen. There'll never be reconciliation. No, this is something though that this is a long game right here. And it really feels to be contingent to the work each of you is willing to do to kind of like move with the flow of this. Some of this that's taking place, like with these blocks and kind of the idea of a process that's already in motion, but needs to be allowed to complete and finish out in terms of like the calibration of energy within. That's something that neither of you can control. It's energy. I mean, there's things you can do to kind of like hasten that along, work you can be very proactive with as far as like seeking out shadows and barriers within self, clearing the way, prepping the energy, creating that kind of nest within yourself that is the most conducive to sort of the optimal calibration of these energies. But a lot of it is a very organic process. It's a very unpredictable process. There's no true guarantee of like how long that's going to take. The important thing here, though, is that a mechanism is in place and there has been growth up to this point in time. So, it's kind of like with these energies, continued growth is highly likely here, that you will find your way out of kind of this, with this crystal cave right here, sort of this cave of solitude, this sort of like no contact. The dynamic between the two of you in the energetic sense will continue to become more intimate. You'll continue to become closer. It'll continue to become more visceral on a conscious level for the two of you. And it is through the willingness to participate and surrender to that process, in a lot of ways, kind of taking a receptive approach, a passive approach, flowing with this rather than sort of like pressing and trying to will this into being moving into a space of allowing, that you can almost be then carried or sort of allow yourself to move through the remainder of what needs to happen energetically, so that you are both prepared within that space within yourself to be able to harness and sustain kind of those optimal energies of reconciliation in a long-term sense with one another. So definitely it's likely in this situation, but it's just kind of, it's an undetermined point on the horizon. So many moving parts, and especially with two individuals, that adds even more variables into this equation. But this looks like a good energy where you're headed in the right direction. There's a lot of progress that this person has made. You have most likely made a lot of progress as well, because we've got that mirrored energy. So it's just, keep going with that flow, basically. I'm going to get some guidance from Spirit to see kind of what else you need to know about the situation. Fulfillment. So this is all about surrendering to the process, allowing the situation to ripen, knowing, trusting that the seeds between the two of you have been well planted, that these are viable, tending to your own garden, tending to your own kind of like shadow work, the things that you need to do to sort of like nourish yourself, heal, grow, and expand personally on your spiritual journey. This is also tying into the idea of like knowing when to infuse love, care, and attention into the process, into this other person or into yourself, and knowing when to move into the space of allowing things to take place very organically and in the time and manner that they're meant to. It's a give and a take. It's an ebb and a flow that is kind of the best thing that you can do to sort of further the connection along. The approach that you could take to the connection is that, it'll be worth it in the end if you just sort of trust in the process that's unfolding. Continue to grow and to expand in your own manner. And, whatever you've kind of been, it feels like whatever space you've been holding this connection in, it feels like a lot of you may have really surrendered kind of an attachment to outcomes. Maybe you're just checking in on this reading out of curiosity, just kind of a map check. So if that's the case, tying into the idea of like, keep doing what you're doing because it's serving, energetically speaking, this connection very well. If you're holding this person in a loving space within, but being very realistic about, the possibility that they may choose to not continue with this, because that is also a factor that may occur in the future. If you've been working on cultivating that abundance within yourself, regardless of the outcome in this circumstance, that also is something which serves the connection well. So if you've been doing that, keep doing that. If you haven't been doing that, that's definitely something to start, which can again create sort of the proper recipe, the proper garden in which the optimal result in this circumstance for both of you is able to bloom in the time and manner best suited to both of you, energetically speaking, and in terms of your life, in terms of your timeline, in terms of your soul journey, and in terms of your incarnation. So I'm going to get some initials, and this can be a first, middle, or last name of you or this person, or it could spell something out, just whatever resonates for you. Okay, we've got I, A, W, V, J, U, R, and Y. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, or share. If you'd like a personal reading, I offer them through my Etsy shop, and there's a link in the description box of the video for that. I offer a variety of pre-recorded video readings, written readings, and channeled letters. Turnaround time on everything is 5 to 7 days from the time of purchase. I also sell handmade jewelry, dream catchers, and sun catchers if you're interested in checking any of that out as well. And I've launched a second channel here on YouTube, which is called Lady of the Dawn Tarot. There's a link in the description box as well as in the channel section of my page for that. The format over there consists of pick-a-cards and general energy readings related to subjects such as spirituality, ascension, wellness, and self-love. So if any of that sounds interesting, I invite you to check that channel out. I thank you for your support there, as well as for your continued support here on this channel. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well.